G'day folks, so today in the pursuit of the WA Yowie, we are going to head off into the central wheat belt, Western Australia, heading east out of Perth to a town that has quite extensive, or a few towns I should say, and an area that has quite extensive history of particularly the little fellas, the woodargy, or Junjidi as it's often called on the east coast. Now the captain, him and myself, we have had a number of bands together over the years, and just by chance we started sharing our experiences of weird and wonderful things. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I know I will. We'll see you later. So we're here in the central wheat belt of WA, catching up with my very old, very good mate, the captain. Now, we've got a history that goes back decades.
Yes.
With all sorts of shenanigans all around town. Central wheat belt of WA is a large place, extensive history, both settler and of course First Nations. Kenny grew up in a township in the central wheat belt, not too far away from where we are now, and naturally had numerous experiences of all kinds of variations.
Farmer's son, so
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's a small town, but a farm 22 kilometres north of that town. Yeah.
So, kick it over, mate.
Okay, so obviously some people are going to watch this video that have had experiences, some people won't. I think the first thing I'd like to say is it wasn't until an Indigenous work colleague of mine a number of years ago, we were actually in a truck together, said to me, "Oh, that'd be the little people." Yeah, it made sense as to what I'd seen and experienced.
Can I stop you for 1
Yes.
second? I will just explain. In Australia, where we are now, obviously, there's suggesting that there are three subcategories of the species. There's the big fellas, the dooligal,
Yep.
one of the names, and then there's the medium-sized and the little fella. And the captain's had a lot of experience with the little fellas, yeah. So that's what we're talking about when we say little fellas.
Locally known in the Noongar language as the woodargy.
Junjidi, often on the east coast, certain areas. Nimbin, I believe, Nimbin is also a name for them up near.
Okay.
Nimbin, yeah. Anyways,
Locally is woodargy, and I think the Māori, but woodargy is the common term amongst the First Nations. I actually heard, I used to be a support worker. I've worked with some of my clients who are First Nations, and I currently work for a First Nations organisation, so woodargy is the common term.
Yep.
But it wasn't until I met this chap
in the truck?
in the truck that, and obviously we're not going to mention names, but a friend quite matter-of-factly said, "Oh, that'd be the little people." And I went, "Aha." Anyway, so the first one, and of course, being a farmer's son, I used to hunt and shoot quite avidly, knew the land, worked the land. So again, for those people that haven't had the experience, it's being familiar with the land around you, smells, sights, scenes, that you go, "Oh, that's strange." So we're over on the back part of our property on the gravel road, and we're going down the road to the next paddock, and probably not at the extreme end of the spotlight, but not from the side of the road, but from the bush on the side of the road, something leapt into the middle of the road. I took a shot. I was on the 12 gauge, but it was way out of range, so I could see all the pellets all scatter around. And then, literally, a bound, and it's over onto the strip on the side of the bush. We go up to that spot. Now, if it was a fox, they sometimes go doggo, but usually they take off through the paddock. And it was after harvest, so the stubble's all about that short. Usually you'll see your fox screaming across the paddock 200 or 300 metres. If they do go doggo, you usually pick them up or they'll run down the fence line. But I distinctly remember that this, whatever it was, I thought it was a wild dog, had actually totally disappeared.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Size-wise, what would you mentioned you thought it might have been a wild dog, and also was it on all fours? Did you notice, or it was just that one impact as you mentioned and gone?
It looked like it was crouching.
Yep.
Shaggy, and as we spoke earlier, I realised in hindsight, probably shaggy, probably a coat, like a skin coat, and probably a spear or a short stick.
Yeah.
But literally a bound from the remnant little strip of bush into the middle of the road, took the shot, bounded off, out of sight, and was totally gone. I didn't think too much of that at that time, just thought it was a little bit strange. And when you're out spotlighting, we did an extensive search to see if we could spot the fox, as we would. Anyway, moving right along, about 10 years later, I'd come back from overseas. I was working on the neighbour's property, and
Whereabouts does it put us in time, roughly?
okay, so that would have been 1987.
Yep.
That first one, and this next one would be 2000.
Yep.
I think. Where am I? Yeah, 2000.
Just before we started off.
We've
had many bands together and gotten up to all sorts of mischief, but that's stories for a different time and place.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, so I was coming back from the neighbour's property. It was seeding time, and decided to shoot some rabbits after having flattened my battery. Managed to conk the car out, reversing around, and obviously it wasn't going to go, so I had a long walk home. I don't know how many kilometres home I had to walk, but it'd have to be 10.
Yeah.
Probably 10. Took my 12 gauge with me. And as people appreciate out in country areas, some of the land is, it's a bit spooky and it's got a funny vibe. I got about halfway through the journey and was sort of a little bit jittery, thought, and then, interestingly enough, as I crossed into our property, and again, it's after harvest time, stubble is short, it's even decaying, and there was a mob of sheep in the paddock. And the first thing I noticed, the sheep were really spooked. And look, I've been in the paddock at night with the sheep, they know who you are, they'll they won't run off, but they'll move off.
Yeah.
But they were spooked. And it was a fairly large paddock, I get about halfway through it, sheep are going ballistic, couldn't smell a fox, and then I realised, I kind of felt it, it was like, something's here.
Yeah.
And it was classic out of a movie. I would stop, then be the second footfall after me. And it wasn't a moonlit night, and sort of at the end of my vision, I could almost make out a shape in the old crop. Look, it seemed like an eternity. It was probably only a minute or a couple of minutes, but it seemed, as people talk about these things, it seemed to be.
Can I ask, size-wise, the shades or whatever impression you got, was it still one of the little fellas?
Yeah, it's a little fellas, so hard to pick, but by the sound of the crunching of the remnant crop, and again, probably like the thing that jumped onto the road, probably large dog size, if we were wanting a size, or human this big, so to speak. So this went on for what seemed to be an eternity. I stopped a number of times. I stopped at least 5 to 7 times to check, and and then the crunch afterwards. Again, couldn't smell a fox, couldn't smell any other game, and by this time I'm starting to get really spooked. So I actually let a shot rip in the vicinity of where it was, and then it stopped. And kept walking home, and it didn't come back.
You didn't hear any departures sort of
tank
going off through the bush?
No, because it's not bush, it's
no.
Clear
right,
paddock.
sorry,
it's clear paddock. So if it took off away from me, and as we know, they're fleet-footed, so, and decaying stubble that's damp, probably not a lot of noise.
Soft.
Yeah.